if you've ever used a vintage pattern, you know they're not exactly detailed. Hey everybody, it's Liz, and I'm back to share with you 2 projects. I've got this lovely blanket coat from Wearing History, and I've got some linen wide-legged trousers from Simplicity. And if you stick around until the very end, you're gonna get to see a mini travel vlog, kind of like food vlog really, from my latest trip to Texas. So let's get going. So I started out the coat by making the welt pocket flaps. You just sew the 2 sides, turn, press, top stitch, and then I did serge the raw edges there just to make it nice and tidy. So when you go to assemble the welt, you put down the flap and then you put one side of the lining on one side and then the other side on the other side, like so, matching up the dots. And then after you do that, you're gonna actually sew it down, not just baste, but sew it down. And then you're gonna make a slit down that pocket area according to the instructions, like you would any other welt pocket. And you turn it inside out, press, and then you sew around the lining. And I just use my pinking shears to make it nice and tidy. And now it's time to make that front dart, which actually is going to go all the way from the shoulder neck area to the top of that welt pocket. You just stitch along that line there. And there you have it. So then the instructions have you hand stitch that flap down, and I just made sure that there weren't any little gaps between the top of the welt and the rest of the pocket. I did a ladder stitch to stitch the pocket flap to the coat. You want to make sure it's nice and secure. So then I actually went ahead and stay stitched around the entire top part of the coat, and I probably should have done that sooner, but better late than never. I just didn't want it to stretch out because there's a lot of bias there. So after that, I did the back neck darts, which are very simple. Just do them like any other darts. Press them inward. And then I did the shoulder, I don't know what that's considered, seam, I guess. And that's what gives you that nice shaping on the top there. I just pinked the seam allowance. So here you can see where it actually sits. Just like that. So after that, I serged the raw edges of the sleeves. And I then sewed them together. And then after that, I lined them up with the rest of the coat, pinned. And then I tried to match all of the notches, but I will say some of the notches weren't quite lining up, and I really don't think that that was my fault. I think there were some errors in the pattern. So as you're lining up your notches, just use your best judgment, use your instincts, knowing that they probably, well, I shouldn't say probably, they might not match up. And it's okay because the seam ended up being perfectly the right length and everything. It's just the notches weren't quite matching up. So after that, you stitch around the armhole and the shoulder. So at this point, I tried it on, and not gonna lie, I was not really feeling great about it. I was thinking, I think I might have made it too big. I wanted it to be oversized because I like oversized jackets and stuff like that, but I wasn't loving it. But you know what? I was going to trust the process because sometimes projects just have that awkward phase and like the ugly duckling phase, but then in the end you end up loving them. So I was trusting the process, knowing that it's going to look different once I put the hood on and the pockets and get the belt and all that. And I'm so glad I did because I did end up loving it. Okay, so after I set in the sleeves, I then took some bias binding as per the instructions and sewed it around those raw edges. You don't have to do that if you're doing a lining, but I decided not to do a lining because Florida. So after that, then you top stitch all the way around that. And that's what gives you that nice decorative stitch right here. And after that, it was time for the hood. So I ran out of fabric and I basically had to kind of get a little creative with the hood, but I did have enough for one side. So I knew, okay, if I just finish that raw edge on the back middle of the hood, then I could just make a facing to go around the top part of the hood, and then it wouldn't be a raw edge. So that's what I did. I just drafted like a crescent kind of shape, and then I sandwiched the edge of the hood in between those two pieces like so, and I stitched it on one side and then I hand stitched it on the other side just so that it was nice and professional looking. So after that, I stitched the hood to the coat like so. And at that point, it was time to add the facing. So first I stitched the back neck facing to the front facing, and then I stitched the whole thing all the way around from one front hem all the way around down to the other. And I did actually serge that raw edge, but I did not need to do that. So don't do that because the whole thing gets top stitched and it's encased anyway, so it's really pointless to do that. But that's how it looks. It looks super nice. And then I did serge that raw edge there and turn it under, and then I stitched that just so that it was nice and clean. Nice and finished. You don't have to do that. You could just pink it if you want to. Again, if you're doing a lining, you don't need to do that part, but I did. Then I tacked the facing to the seams just to keep it in place. So after that, everybody's favorite part, the buttonholes. I just used my machine and it worked out. Luckily, I didn't have to fuss with them too much. I always use some fray check whenever I make buttonholes just to, prevent any tragedies. Even if I cut into the threads just a little bit, then that fray check will keep it from unraveling too much. So this is optional. I made this little neck strap here. I didn't end up using it, but if you want to make it, it's really simple. It's just two pieces, and then you sew them together, leaving a space to turn it, and then you press it, you top stitch it. I don't know, it just was unnecessary, so I decided to forego it. But if you wanted to make this, then you can just make a couple of buttonholes right here on either side, stitch a couple buttons onto your coat up here, and then, well, you can't see it, but it would just go right up there. But I didn't end up doing it. Okay, and the next piece was the belt. So also very simple. It's just one piece. You fold it over in half and then you sew along the edges, leaving a space to turn. So I pressed it and then I top stitched it. And this fabric takes top stitching really well. Then I took this vintage belt buckle from, I'm actually not sure when it's from. It might be the 20s, it might be the 40s, but I know it's very old. And then according to the instructions, I catch stitched the facing. And for the sleeves, they're like quite long on me. So I serged the raw edge and then I folded it up, stitched it, and then folded it up again and stitched that, and I still roll them up. I have kind of short arms. So for the patch pockets, I folded the top part down and I finished that raw edge, and then I sewed them together on the sides, turned it, and then I took the lining and I finished that raw edge, and then I pressed that seam allowance in, and then I sandwiched that in between the coat and the pocket. So it was basically coat, lining, patch pocket, and then I sewed all the way around there. And then I also hand stitched around the perimeter of the pocket just so it was nice and flat. And that concludes the coat assembly. So it was a little tricky because it's vintage instructions, and if you've ever used a vintage pattern, you know they're not exactly detailed. But I just kind of took my time, and luckily I have enough experience at this point to get through it pretty much with no problems. If you're nervous about the welt pocket, just practice it on some scrap before you actually cut into your coat. And as long as you just take your time, then, you know, it's no problem. You can just, you can do it. You can do it. So something else I want to mention about the coat is that I left the raw edge here, the selvage, as the hem because I like how it looks. I think it goes great with the whole blanket theme, sort of like tassels almost. And I should say this fabric is actually cut on the cross grain. A, I wanted the stripes to be going horizontally, and B, it just wouldn't have fit on the pattern if I had laid it out the other way. I would have had to cut the fabric and piece it together to be wide enough. So I have to give a shout out to Minerva.com. They sent me this fabric in exchange for a blog post. They also sent me the fabric for the trousers that you were about to see. So thank you, Minerva. And I really, 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 really love this fabric. I really love it. It is even more beautiful than I thought it was going to be when I saw it online. It's really soft. It's woven. The pattern is woven into the fabric. It's not just like printed on. It has a nice drape. It's warm, but it's not like too stuffy. It's the perfect lightweight yet also cozy fabric for anywhere that's not just a straight up frozen tundra in the winter. So highly, highly recommend. I'm going to link it down below. So if you're interested in getting it, then, you know, use my link. So speaking of trousers, I sewed these 1940s wide-legged linen trousers from Simplicity 3688. It is a vintage reproduction pattern. And this is the second pair that I've made of these pants, and I just adore them. These linen trousers, it's actually a linen rayon blend. It is a Robert Kaufman blend, also from Minerva, like I said. And the color is espresso, and I think it's just gorgeous. It's two different color threads woven together to create this nice kind of heathered look. It reminds me of like, well, espresso or like rich soil. So I started off by stay stitching the top of the waist of the legs, and then I made the darts. I pressed them. So I sewed them together at the crotch and then at the side seams. I made sure to leave room for the zipper on one side. So I sewed a lap zipper, and I think my zipper's actually navy blue. I didn't mean to make it navy blue. I thought it was black, and it was an old zipper that I just had hanging around. It didn't have a package. Otherwise I would have seen that it wasn't black. But anyway, I just installed the zipper according to the instructions, and after that I sewed the waistband to the top of the pants. I sewed the edge of the little tab to become where the button sits for the waistband. And then the other side, it's got this interesting little construction detail where you flip up the seam allowance at like a 45-degree angle, and then you turn. I think it might be to accommodate the top of the zipper, so kind of relieve some of that bulk right there. That's my best guess. So, of course, now it's time for my trusty Elmer's glue stick, which I like to use instead of basting because I am lazy. But it works great, so why not use it? And then you basically stitch in the ditch along that seam there, catching the other side of the waistband underneath. And there you go. So after that, it's time to put in the buttonhole, and I did the same thing as with the blanket coat. I made sure to fray check it, got a little strings hanging off of there. And then I sewed the button on underneath. Just hand stitched it on. The last step of the pants is, of course, to hem them, and I basically folded them up and then pinned them, checked to see if they were the right length, and then I pressed that edge to get a nice crisp edge so I could then serge off the raggedy top and then turn that under, press that, and then turn it under again, and catch stitch, which I actually finished on the plane on the way to Texas. So here's the finished look. I wanted to show you how these pieces looked when they're styled vintage and modern because, you know, let's face it, most days I don't dress all pretty vintage. I'm kind of au naturel. Maybe I'll put some makeup on, but I'm not looking vintage. Okay, so while I have you, here's my little mini travel vlog to Texas. This is Nigel, my beau, my boyfriend. And we went to go visit his parents in Texas. We went to Dallas, which is where his dad was born and raised. And we got to stay in this really cool Airbnb. Nigel and I actually stayed in the loft, which was kind of terrifying. But luckily, there weren't any incidents. We went to the Dallas Cowboys practice facility, and him and his dad were really excited about that. Then we decided to go get barbecue, and we waited 2 hours in line, but it was so good, so worth it. The jalapeno cheddar sausage was so good, and they have these things called Texas Twinkies, which are basically a jalapeno stuffed with like cream cheese and brisket and then wrapped with bacon. And we also got some pie from this place called Pie Emporium. Oh my gosh, it was so good. Ugh. And then Nigel and I went back to Beaumont, which is where he's from, with his parents, and we had some Cajun food. It was so good. Those shrimp, oh man. Oh, I'm still dreaming about those shrimp. That's about it for my mini travel vlog. Let me know if you liked it. It's something that I would like to expand upon in the future, maybe do separate videos. I don't know, we'll see. But yeah, let me know if you liked it. And if you liked it, then give me a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe if you're new to my channel. And until next time, thank you so much for watching. Mwah.